What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. I'm Dr. Craig Spodak, along with Dr. Peter Boulden and our esteemed guest, the Bloody Tooth Guy. Super excited. How you guys doing? We're awesome, man. Just a bit of housekeeping here. So should I call you Dr. Tooth Guy or Mr. Bloody, or can I just call you Bloody?
Whatever you want.
BTG on the scene.
No doubt.
I like BTG. Can I call you the notorious BTG, though?
A huge fan of BIG, so it works for me. No doubt.
Yeah. There it is.
We had a guy on the podcast. There's actually a guy that works with me now, Dr. Northhook. And I'm like, what does Northhook stand for? He's like, well, it's actually like Norwegian. I'm like, hey, why don't you become the implant Viking? So he literally took that name. He's on Instagram as the implant Viking now. He's got like thousands of followers.
Are you really taking credit for that, by the way?
Dude, that was my freaking thing. That was
no, that was me.
No, it was not.
Go back and check. Look, history will prove us correct. That was again on the same podcast. Go back.
Pete, I don't know if you paid your Metro.
I named him.
I don't know if you paid your Metro PCS bill this month for the office Wi-Fi connection, but you're freaking like very staccato. Like there's a lot of. Just check your connection.
Oh, no. You talking to me?
No, it's Pete. So anyway, we're really excited to have you here. A little bit of background. I started noticing who you were. I went to the DIA last year, and there was a lot of buzz about you and meeting you. And I started following your Instagram channel. And what do you got, like 120,000 followers now on Instagram?
No, just 103, something like that.
After this podcast, though, bro, could be 120,000.
Look, I appreciate it, and I hope so. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think that sounded good.
It'd be like 103.5 after this.
Yeah, exactly. 104. I'll take one.
So I watch what you're doing. Obviously, an oral surgeon. Doing amazing work, really careful surgical technique and precision. And you've got a massive influence in dentistry. So it's great to have you here. But I want to just get a little bit of background, like what prompted you to start posting on Instagram and putting those clinical photos together?
It actually started so randomly. It was about 4.5 years ago now. I was sitting in my office and, kind of like on my personal Instagram, just noticing trends and looking at things. And Instagram was early at that time. I mean, there was really no major dental presence at the time. But I saw this Dr. Pimple Popper, and I thought to myself, she does an amazing job. People are interested. Maybe people would want to see bloody teeth. I mean, that literally was the thinking on it. I put up, if you look at my early stuff, it's just pictures of bloody teeth with absolutely no interest, no artistic value, nothing whatsoever, no educational value, nothing. And I got like a little bit of following, 300, 400, 500, 1,200, 10,000, 30,000 before you knew it. I mean, the evolution of Instagram changed. More and more dentists were on it. If you look at, what's going on in the dental world of Instagram now, it's all over the place. It's tremendous for our profession and each individual specialty, both as a networking opportunity and as well to kind of get the word out on what we all do. And I think it's great.
That's awesome. And are you working clinically? How many days a week are you actually doing clinical practice?
Minimally 4.5 still.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So, I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
No, well, no, go ahead. I'd like you to go down that. So 4.5 days minimally, but sometimes more.
Yeah, I mean, never really more than 5 unless there are emergencies and things like that I need to see. My practice has grown pretty substantially since I started it in 2007. And so it gives me a little bit of an opportunity to step back a little bit from the clinical side of things. So whereas I would be 6 days a week for years, it's now about 4.5. I do a lot of the running of the business and, of course, try to manage the Instagram. So bandwidth becomes a problem. But overall, I'm working. I'm actually doing the things that you see me doing all the time.
That's awesome. And it seems like it's one of the things I think to your credit, and the reason why the Instagram page is doing so well is you can just feel your passion for what you do. Like you can feel the way you communicate with the patients and, you're in it and it's authentic. And I think that's probably why And your surgical results are pristine. Wow, you're really, really great at what you do. So it's cool. It's cool that dentistry has people like you to help guide. I imagine you get shit tons of DMs though, and like, what would you do here? What do you think of this X-ray? Like, tell a specialty.
I do. I get a bunch of. I mean, actually, that's to me the best part of it. I mean, the whole thing is great. It's great for my ego. My kids think I'm like some sort of pseudo celebrity, and so do their friends, which works for me. But the fact is that, people from across the world, all over the world, Eastern Europe, Middle East, South America, everywhere, they talk to me. They ask me questions clinically. They ask me questions personally. I've had a couple of, let's say, opportunities. Things have been really nice talking to other people, for sure.
Tell me a little bit more about the opportunities. Like people say, come speak here or do this, or
come speak here. Certain companies want me to kind of represent what they do. If you notice, I don't really do anything like that. It's not that I wouldn't, it just would have to be so appropriate for me. I mean, I use very specific instruments, very specific implant systems. If those companies and I could speak about something like that, maybe, but some random company that I never would use, I literally would never ever even entertain the concept.
And we're the same. Pete and I are the same, by the way. We take no money for the podcast. No one sponsors this. I mean, we get offers all the time, like, hey, can we just do a recording before we actually go live? And we don't take any money. We've had really significant players that we both use. We just don't want to pollute the water. So we feel the same way.
Yeah, I respect that tremendously.
Yeah, there's no.
So given that your kids think you're a celebrity, I love this. I want to go back to this. What happens when you finally reveal who you are? Do you think some of that acclaim, like is some of the mystery and some of the popularity because you have this mystery behind you, right? Like Craig and I were talking earlier in the car about you on the way here, and it was like, he's the Satoshi Nakamoto. So that's Bitcoin.
Yeah.
No one knows who it is, right? And right.
Wait. You know what? He could be Satoshi Nakamoto. Let me just ask you very directly, because we're seeing video right now, but no one will see video. So I feel like I could get from your body language, are you Satoshi Nakamoto? Yes or no? Yeah, I knew it.
No, the other example we gave is that guy in South Florida, Craig, that the artist who never like always covers his face up, Alec Monopoly or whatever, like blowing up with his art, right? And he covers his face always, even in public, in pictures and everything. So BTG, if aren't you worried about once you disclose who you are that no longer you'll be the apple of your children's eye? Well, you will always be the apple of your kid's eye.
Always.
Not be that celebrity, right?
I don't know. I mean, if you look at my overall following and the people who follow me, I think the majority of people who really get what I do think that the best thing to do is to remain anonymous, and I get that. I see that. I don't think it would change anything. I mean, I still would be posting my surgical videos. I still would be posting the pictures that I post. It's not going to be about me and my lifestyle or anything like that. It's me with, instead of the blue background that I use randomly on my stories, it'll be me. Or instead of covering my face, it'll be me. I don't know. I don't think it's going to take much away. Maybe, but I guess time will tell.
Well, why did you start it? Why did you start being anonymous? You were concerned about like HIPAA, patient privacy?
Honestly, initially it was if you look back at it, like I said, it was pictures of bloody teeth. There was really nothing, no surgery whatsoever. And I didn't really know, honestly, I really didn't know ethically what it was all about. I didn't really fully understand the HIPAA side of things. I mean, I understand HIPAA very well, but I didn't understand it as it related to this kind of stuff. And I don't think anybody did at the time. I also don't think anybody was really doing it. So initially, we're thinking 4 years ago, I didn't know if the mother of the young lady who was coming in to see me for wisdom teeth would want a picture of her daughter's wisdom teeth on.
Yeah, but how would they know? No one would know. You as a dentist couldn't even identify your own extracted wisdom teeth.
That's exactly right. But the fact is I just didn't know. I didn't know enough to know. And I just kind of stayed that way. And then eventually, I mean, now I have patients literally every day asking me to video them or put them on or whatever it is. And, I'll selectively let patients know to follow my account or whatever it is. They always will kind of sign something, and then they kind of sign something. They always will sign something that allows for publication of records.
So your patients know you're BTG.
Some of them do. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
So the most important.
So tell me about this little East Coast, West Coast. Go ahead, Greg.
I just said the most important thing. Well, I go to the. I'll ask him. I'll ask after. What's the East Coast, West Coast? Talk to me.
You don't know the East Coast, West Coast competition? BTG does. He knows what I'm talking about.
Tupac and Biggie. Is that what you're talking about?
It's Tupac and Biggie. No. So
yeah,
it's not really a
BTG and Ben Johnson.
Yeah. It's all love. And I met Ben through Instagram a few years ago when it all started, and we were doing similar things. If you look at his account and you look at mine, in the early days, very similar pictures of bloody teeth and stuff like that. He's obviously not been anonymous, and he goes and he's amazing, right? You know his family, you know who he is. He's a funny, witty, smart guy and a really good surgeon. And I love what he does. And it actually, if you look at the differences between our accounts and you look at successful accounts in general, you see that there is, like you said, Craig, authenticity. And you see that there's something special and different about that account. If you look at a lot of dental Instagram accounts, it's a lot of the same shit. I don't know if we can curse on your podcast, but it's a lot of the same stuff. If you look at a lot of the practice-based Instagram accounts, it's a lot of self-serving stuff. But with Ben, you're learning about him, you're learning about dentistry, you're understanding who he is, oral surgery, of course. And with me, it's really more about the procedures. So it's very, very different types of accounts, all love all the time, but it's fun to play.
What's his Instagram? What's his IG?
PNWOMS.
Oh yeah, I know who this is. Yeah. Got it. So what?
So Craig, Google,
tell me.
Hashtag Google Art. I'm sorry. Hashtag Carpal Art. Check it out.
Oh yeah. I was watching that stuff. So who started
that? Right?
Who started Carpal Art? Who started that? I don't want to start a fight here.
This is.
I know, because I know what happened to Tupac and Biggie. I know what happened.
Exactly. I don't want to get. Yeah, exactly. So I would say
don't hate the player, hate the game, and let's move on. Right?
You should check out. Look at the first ever hashtag Carpal Art. See who started it.
I just don't. But I don't want to get in the middle of an East Coast West Coast thing.
I would say,
we got Nipsey Hussle now. I don't want to go there. Let's just leave.
I would say he started the term without question, but I started the movement. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I
love it.
Yeah. I think we have to insert like a street saying right here. If you know one, you're younger than me. It's not don't hate the player, hate the game. It's something different. I don't know what it is. It's like live by the street, die by the street, something like that. We'll leave it alone.
Yeah.
So what is the plan then? Is there some future unveiling celebration that we can look forward to, or one day in the future, or what are we thinking here?
Yeah, so there was a lot of discussion about when I eclipsed 100,000 followers that I was going to show my face and all that. And actually, to be honest, I think I kind of was a little bit weak on that, because I should have looked to produce it. Again, it's a bandwidth thing. I'm running my offices and practicing, and so sometimes the bloody tooth guy thing goes on the back burner. Yeah, I believe wholeheartedly there will be some sort of well-produced reveal, if you will. Not to be a douche. That's not my nature, but at the same time, it'll be fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, and
DIA does not pop the cherry, though, right? DIA does not get to pop the cherry.
I don't know. We'll see. I'll be there. I'm on the stage. The main.
Oh, then come on, man. Those guys are like, they live and die on Instagram, bro. You'll be blowing up in a second. So
I know the thing is that I think that many of, and this is DIA is amazing. Huge fan of all those guys. They do a great job, and they're fully leading the way in terms of Instagram based, especially social media, dentistry, if you will. But a lot of the people who follow them also follow me. So I don't know, I don't know how much. Maybe a Miguel Ortiz or something who's got
a little incestuous. Is that what you're saying? The following is a little incestuous?
Not in a negative way, but we all love each other. So.
Podcasts are the same way. Have you ever noticed, like, people, like, it's just like shared guest, and like, so it's, hey, dentistry is a small, tight knit group, and like it's bound to be that way.
For sure.
Also, another thing I want to talk to you about is like, what's the carpal challenge?
The carpal challenge. Was there a carpal challenge? I don't know.
Yeah. How fast you can,
I remember that.
Like a gunslinger.
Yeah, I remember that. That was definitely started by PNW or maybe someone else, but it was like he tagged me in it, and I just had to show him what it was all about. I could do it faster than the one I posted, but I just did it.
Greg, you know what it is? How fast you can empty a carpal and then reload it, right? Like literally like a Western gunslinger.
What I find fascinating is that, I always Pete and I have talked about this on prior podcasts. I think dentists blur the lines of what type of content they should be putting on their Instagram. And there's obviously a dentist focused content, which is what yours is, an industry focused content. And then there's like a patient focused content. Cause I see people mixing the two and unsuccessfully doing it where, they're a veneer dentist or cosmetic dentist and they're posting pictures of these beautiful preps, and patients are like on their feed and like, what the fuck? Are you going to do that to my teeth? Like shave them down to little nubs, like cancel my deposit. Right. And I think that it's important to mention that I'm fairly certain that you have a practice patient focused social media presence as well, which we don't have to talk about now, but it's interesting to me that you'd find patients that would want to follow BTG because they got a deposit for the oral surgery and they see those teeth coming out and they get like, oh shit, you're doing that to me?
Yeah, very few, but there are some. I do not put any bloody content on my personal or on my business Instagram account. I mean, I actually, one of my partner does from time to time. He does kind of a little bit more, let's call them comprehensive, like kind of bigger procedure, more maxillofacial. And sometimes those pictures will make their way onto the story for our practice Instagram. I personally, as someone who is very focused on the patient experience and focused on what the patient receives and content branding and our message from a practice perspective, I don't love that. But it's there, and there are people who are interested. I mean, look at, again, just a Dr. Pimple Popper thing. I mean, think about this. She has millions and millions of followers who are interested in popping pimples and cystectomies and things. I mean,
there's an earwax one too that I'm freaking fascinated with. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. The earwax one with the otocam. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong in my brain, but I love that shit. That's why. Yeah,
I love it. There's a guy actually.
I guess that's why we're dentists.
Yeah, there's a guy actually who I'm a friend of, and he lives near me. His name is Dr. Booger, and he does that earwax thing. He's an ENT. He's an awesome guy. Love the guy. He has no clue I'm Bloody Tooth Guy. I know exactly who he is. So
that's
from time
awesome.
to time, I'll like post stuff with him in it. But he's great, Dr. Booger. Check him out.
That's awesome. So, what year did you graduate to oral surgery? What year did you leave the program?
I finished training in 2003.
Okay, got it. And dental school right before 99?
99, yeah. 99.
Okay, I got out in 98, so we're about the same age probably.
Yeah.
And just talk to me, because I love hearing this conversation from oral surgeons. We had Dr. Picos on not long ago. And, for me, and with all due respect, I see a little bit of a disconnection of what the oral surgery training is and then what private practice is like. And I wonder, I know why oral surgery programs are the way they are, and I understand the vast and broad nature of the training, but I see a lot of oral surgeons coming out like lost as to what they're doing, because in residency programs, depending on where you go, you're slaying dragons, you're doing facial trauma, you're doing big stuff, and you kind of get that expectation, like this is what I'm going to be doing as my scope. So talk to me about like what you feel like, what it was like coming out from oral surgery training, like what you thought it was going to be and the reality. And then if you see any trends in oral surgery and how they're being, how those trends are being expressed into the private sector.
Yeah. I actually love that question. That's a big thing. And it's very specific to the United States. So to put that in context, and we're talking about, like, I have a worldwide audience. I assume you guys did too. In the United States,
we have a guy living in Zimbabwe. He tagged us. He bought our book. So I want to give a shout out to that guy. I'll find out his name.
I love that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So in the United States, I mean, oral and maxillofacial surgery is one specialty. Of course, as everyone knows, you start out in dental school and then you either do a 4-year or a 6-year dual degree program. All of our training is extensive, and I think that's what separates us from any other dental specialty. I personally, I mean, I'm going to kind of go back and forth on this question on the answer. I personally was always very interested in the oral surgery part of things. I loved larger procedures. I trained in a very trauma heavy program, inner city. I trained, did a lot of orthognathic surgery. I did, of course, a lot of teeth, a lot of general anesthesia training, pathology, infections. I mean, the full gamut. Nowadays, there are guys coming out who may be coming from, let's say, superior academic institutions from where I came, and they end up with MDs from great programs, from great schools, and they are a little bit confused sometimes. And I deal with that because I interview a lot of people to work with me and for me in my practices, and a lot of guys have to understand that the vast majority of what oral maxillofacial surgeons are doing in the United States now is dental alveolar surgery, right? And it's something that has to be understood, and I think it is understood by most people. And most people I'm speaking to understand that that's what they're doing. They might have some little subset of an interest, like they want to do more orthognathics or TMJ or whatever it is. And then those who want to go on to get better training can. There are a lot more fellowship opportunities now than there were when I came out. Microvascular surgery, aesthetic surgery, head and neck, whatever it is, cancer. And these people go on and they actually, as long as they're in the right place and they are the right person, who they are as a human and in terms of their qualifications, they're doing that stuff. So yeah, you get guys who are definitely a little bit frustrated, let's say. But I think for the most part, I mean, for me, I'm living for me my perfect situation. I'm doing exactly what I anticipated I'd be doing, and exactly what I want to be doing.
I think there's just pressure though. So you get out of dental school and you go then you really cross over into the medical world. There's just always this conflict of like, oh, you're just a dentist. I mean, look at the movie like The Hangover. Like, you're not a freaking doctor. Like, even my kids have said that to me before. Like, I was trying to give them medicine and mommy's like, my wife is like, hey, daddy's a doctor. And my 6-year-old is like, he's not a doctor, he's a dentist. So you cross over into the oral surgery residency program, and you're shoulder to shoulder with the trauma surgeons. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, because let's face it, when we go out and meet our friends, they're like, oh, you're a dentist? Like, even you as an oral surgeon, like, oh, can I get you do teeth cleanings? I'm like, no, fuck, I don't do fucking teeth cleanings.
Yeah, will you clean my teeth?
Yeah, can you clean my teeth? So there's this societal thing, and I think that it amplifies the pressure on the oral surgeon, because now they go into this residency, and it's like you're at, like, let's say you're Jackson or something like that. You're doing it where the facial trauma departments combined with the oral surgery department. You're literally putting faces back together, and you develop these massive gross motor skills where, like, people go through a car window and you put them all back together. And that's your training. And now all of a sudden you go into the private practice, you put an implant in, and your general dentist says, dude, the freaking papilla's gone. And you're like, papilla? What are you worried about a papilla for? You should have seen this guy at the hospital last week and his nose was by his ear, and I freaking made him all better.
Right. So I'll tell you, even implicit in that question is like a little bit of a bias. If you think about it, if you understand, first of all, everybody's an individual. There are plenty of general dentists out there who are placing tons and tons of implants and doing surgery, and they're great. As long as they're well trained and they're doing it well and they've got the right hand skills and they understand how to handle complications, God bless. If they are, then you have oral maxillofacial surgeons who can't even deliver and block. They can't get a patient numb. So just because you are, whatever little grouping that you're in, doesn't really kind of explain your skill set, right? So I am, and this is not self-serving, no one knows who I am, they can't even come to me, but the fact is I am very aware of soft tissue. My referring dentists expect a very high level of, so I mean, I do a ton of anterior implants.
I see it. I know your skills.
No, that's not, I mean, I appreciate that. But again, I'm just trying to, just as an example, in any specialty, there are plenty of periodontists who are let's say, not great at what they do, and plenty of oral surgeons who are not great at what they do, and vice versa, right? So there's definitely a kind of like an overall feeling that oral maxillofacial surgeons don't care, or maybe see a bigger thing and therefore realize how little. It depends on what perspective you're looking at, right? Like,
sure,
you're right. Who cares about a papilla? What does it really matter? What does it really matter? Why are you using a 6-0 suture when you could just use I mean, what's the difference? It doesn't make a difference. They're gums, they heal, right? But every human being is an individual, and because every human being is an individual, you could be trained like, well, I was trained in a hardcore place, tons and tons and tons of stuff. But I was always aware that what I was really training for was private practice oral surgery. So I took those opportunities to kind of hone those skills in addition.
Did you have a mentor? Did you have a private practice mentor?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's probably, I think I'm hearing that. So there was somebody during your program like, hey, in the private world, if you do this, your dentist won't refer to you anymore. Someone was squeaking in your ear, in other words.
Yeah, but I think also just the knowledge of, like, let's say a higher EQ, if you will, right?
Yeah.
A lot of oral surgeons they've always done well. They're type A people, meaning academically done well. They're type A people. And through residency, they are like the top of the chain or whatever it is, right? So all the general practice
alpha male and alpha female,
yeah, whatever it is. So they think about it like pumps up their ego. They feel so good about themselves. Oh, I'm big time. And then you get out and you realize that you're actually absolutely at the beck and call of these people that you were kind of thinking you were better than the whole time. That's bullshit.
That's
Again,
brilliant.
My point is, everyone is an individual. So I was aware very early on that people had different skill sets. A general dentist who's highly focused on a 6 degrees of taper for their crown prep wasn't kind of my mindset, but I respect that in the same way that I respect the guys who do cleft lip and palate surgery. Everybody's got their really, really high level of focus. And there are shitty dentists, there are great dentists, there are shitty oral surgeons, great oral surgeons, and that's the world that we live in.
Yeah, I see how you've pivoted your way through it with your EQ, the emotional intelligence and stuff like that. But I do fear that the oral surgery training has lost its way, because not everybody's going to have that ability to pivot and define themselves post residency. You go in, you're doing these big cases, you have the ego because you're at that high level of responsibility, and in some ways it feels, and I'm not an oral surgeon, and don't pretend to be. I don't even do oral surgery procedures, but it feels as though it's an act of resignation, or looked upon as an act of resignation, that I'm no longer going to do this massive scope, and I'm just going to do this. It's like, oh, well, okay, then you're not being authentic because your training tells you to, I think it's just really important with that message be honed in the programs. And Picos was talking about it as well.
I think it's important that in our community that the message is honed. I think there's kind of like a shift occurring in oral surgery now. Many people are focusing on the oral surgery, right? And then there is a large subset of people who are going out and doing maxillofacial surgery, which is the way it is all over the world, right? I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what you should do. Personally, I think anything that you do, it doesn't matter what your level of training, you should do it. You should be well trained. You should be able to handle any complication that comes your way, and you should do it a lot. And I mean, that's it. I don't do, you look at my stuff, you see what I do every day. I'm not doing open joint TMJ surgery. I'm not the guy for that. Can I do it? Absolutely. Have I done it? Absolutely. I'm not the best person to do that. I'm the best person to do an exposure or wisdom teeth, or I believe dental implants, large cases, small cases, whatever it is.
Yeah,
but I'm certainly not the best open joint TMJ surgeon.
Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, like, that's a great skill. And then you were talking about the business mentor, right? And like, just having that self-awareness, I think is missing in profession, right? You've identified things you're good at, you're best at, and you're like, look, I'm gonna let someone else do this because I acknowledge that I'm not the best in this. I'm gonna stay in my lane. And it's worked to your better, it's worked to your betterment, right? Like you're obviously busy and you're a successful businessman. Whereas a lot of dentists will say, well, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be a jack of all trades, right? And then it's the master of none. It's that mentality. And we think that if we give up something, then that means someone else wins and we lose, versus like being like, I'm just going to do these 3 things because I do them better than anybody.
Well, there's also
triple down on that, as opposed to saying like, no, the joint surgery, that's mine. No, that's mine too. The cleft palate, those are mine, right? All these things, like you can't have it all and be all. You have to identify. And I think that's a self-awareness thing. I think it's a valuable skill to just be, go ahead, Greg.
No, it's the jackass effect I was thinking as you're talking. So you're not busy because you're not good at connecting with patients. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I should just start doing a wider and wider scope because I am not busy. If you're good at what you do, you can just do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things and be solidly booked. But people don't have the emotional awareness. So they're like, oh, patients just don't value me, or, oh, patients these days, all they care about is money. I mean, you hear about that, gripe, when it's really, you got, when they say that whenever there's a finger pointing away from you, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. You have to look at what you've done to cause this problem. And I think the jackass effect in dentistry is that you widen your scope bigger and bigger and bigger because you suck and you're not getting patients enrolled. And then you start taking.
There's an opportunity here.
Large.
So I use it to my advantage. Hold on, because this is a good teaching method, right? So I hired for my inadequacies, right? I am not good at extractions. Don't ask me to do that, right? So I have Dr. Curry has joined the team, 10 years ago or whatever it was. And I didn't enjoy doing Invisalign like you did. So I hired Invisalign, but I was really good at one thing and I stayed in that lane and I hired for everything and it opened up bandwidth for everybody else. And now we actually have it, well, everyone knows the story, but like, so I think it's okay to say, hey, I suck at this, suck at that. I don't really want to do that, but I'm awesome at this, right? And that's an opportunity for growth as opposed to inadequacy.
Right, but so I would say I totally agree with everything that you're saying. I've done the same thing. I mean, I have a surgeon who does microvascular free flaps. I have a surgeon who does ablative cancer surgery. I have a surgeon who does big orthognathic procedures, all of whom on paper are, and in real life, very, 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 very well skilled, right? So I do what I do, they do what they do, but I also feel very fortunate to have been successful early at what I was doing to be able to do that. I do see there are guys out there, and it's not necessarily by any fault of their own, and you see them, they all take these courses on how to talk to patients and all this shit. I mean, the fact is that this stuff is innate in you. You can learn how to become a little bit better at being a communicator. Sorry, there's a B, but you can't really learn how to interact with people. I don't know if you can't learn. I think people are better at it or worse at it. So success comes a lot from your ability to speak to other human beings as other human beings, right? And you have to know that. And if you're successful, you're fortunate in that way, because all of who you are as a person has very little to do with things that you have done, right? I mean, you're genetically who you are for the most part. And thankfully, you're successful. So you're successful, so you can hire and you can do this and you can pick and choose. These guys who are kind of like, having a tough time just at life, they're trying to do everything that they do, and they don't do anything really well. And that's kind of shitty for them and for their patients. But that's life. That's the way it is.
Yeah, it's funny though. You picked on something. Your clinical acumen is not directly proportional to how successful you will be in business. And I think that's a narrative that is lost, right? And so I know everyone's talking about it. Right. But just like you said, there are certain behaviors that cannot be learned that are, or they can, it's just harder to do. And you should develop them the same way you develop, flapping techniques or, veneer preps or whatever, right? It's a skill that people need so that you can do more repetitions.
There's a lot of courses, and I think it's easier to train someone how to do a prep or an extraction than it is to communicate to a patient, to convey value and trust. I mean, that's just really freaking tough. I've got some doctors that I'm working with that on, just getting them to communicate. And for the communicator that's not a great communicator, they look at the process. And I always remind people, there's what you say and there's what a person hears. And your responsibility is what they hear, not what you say. You own the result of your communication. So you can say exactly what you're supposed to say, but if it lands on the patient and they wind up getting pissed or not understanding, it's your fault. You have to pivot.
Well, 2 points. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
2 points in response to that. One, yes, with patients, but also with the employees, right? So
Everything, yeah.
you're a team, right? You manage. If you're a good manager, you're managing to who they are as a human being. You don't have a management style necessarily. I don't feel you should have a management style. Your management style should be very fluid, and it should be in response to who this individual human being is. And in so doing, you receive much better results from dealing with the people. And on top of that, just as like another thing, you brought this up and it just kind of struck in my head. You know, I suck at golf. I've always sucked at golf. It's never been something that I didn't grow up in South Florida. I didn't play a lot, but when I started to play as like a little bit of an adult, I would take lessons, and you'd like, you know, got to do this, put your hands like this, stand up straight, do this, whatever it is. And so you could break that golf swing into a zillion different parts, and you could do every one of them right. But if it's not a fluid swing, you suck.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Or you can just be an athlete and know that it comes natural, and you just go back, make the nice swing through, and your ball is going to go where it wants to go, and you understand depth and all this kind of stuff, and you're going to be a good golfer, and you play enough and whatever it is. So yeah, to try to break things down into little pieces, like I'm often asked, what book should I read to learn how to take out teeth, or what to do what you do, or whatever it is? There is not one book. I don't believe that. I don't think there is a book. I mean, there are sources that can explain to you luxation and this and that, and when to use this out. Oh, you know, this and that. Honestly, it's about doing it and understanding and the biofeedback, and just doing it whatever, 10,000 hours or however many times Malcolm Gladwell says you have to do it. So, I mean, that kind of stuff.
Wants the cookbook.
Yeah, exactly. You just do it a lot, and also be understanding. You know, that's it. That's it.
That's true. It's hard stuff, though. I mean, I've talked to a lot of very large DSOs before, and you know, their hiring process is always really about personality and human connection, and then dentistry second. I mean, it's unfortunate that we all have friends, and we have colleagues that we know that are exceptional at what they do, but yet they don't resonate with patients. Patients don't resonate with them, rather, and they don't get a chance to perform their craft. And we know people that are really bad at what they do clinically and exceptional communicators, and they're busy as hell and they're chopping people up. So it's unfortunate that that patients, in order to get them to experience our care, they have to like us and bond with us, and it's not just clinical skill. And the default, by the way, for most medical professionals and dentists specifically, is when challenged, just get more clinical education. Get more and more clinical education, and develop a wider and wider scope, because if you're not busy, you'll typically want to take on more procedures. There are those that are just masters at what they do. I pay raise one of them. He's taken, $55,000 of CE in 1 year alone. So he's just got this massive scope, but he's just kind of honed it into one specific area that he loves, and he's getting good results.
I want to ask you, because I don't get to talk to oral surgeons too much on the podcast, and we do talk about DSOs and consolidation and such. I'd like to know your thoughts and feelings, being that you're a specialist who I'm guessing a lot of upflow work is predicated on downflow dentists or referring dentists, I should say, right? So as the consolidation pathway happens, I know you have your own practice or practices, as the consolidation happens and more things stay internal to a DSO or private equity practice, if you will, right? Where things are staying under one roof. Does that scare you? Do you see that runway, or is that something you've ever thought about? Or
so I do think that's an issue. I'm fortunate enough to, and I'm not blind to it, and I'm not naive about it, but I'm fortunate enough to be practicing in an area where that has not yet really been a large issue, right? So I practice in a pretty affluent suburb. I have a number of offices, right outside New York City, and my patients actually are, most of them are of the mind that they want to maintain the relationship with the small dentist. Now, a lot of the PE guys who are rolling up practices and DSOs are doing things where they're not even letting anyone know that they're related to one another, and that makes sense from their side of things, right? That the dentist that the patient has always been going to is now working under the auspices of this larger group, but they're feeling, the patient is feeling anyway, that they're still seeing their little small private practice. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
from a marketing perspective, is your lion's share of your work going to
from dentists versus
courting other dentists and getting referrals, or are you going B to C, right? Are you going
So,
right?
so it's multiple pronged, right? So the majority of my spend on marketing is B2B based, right? It's really old school type of stuff, just maintaining relationships, which is everything in a specialist's world. When I was younger, when I started out, I started my practice from zero. And when I started out, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of guys, an older endodontist and an older orthodontist, who took to me. They took a liking to me, and they championed me, and they introduced me around my first office to literally any dentist at that time that I needed to know. And thankfully, those people took to me, and I built a practice very, very quickly based on existing relationships with these two highly respected specialists, right? So it's always been my focus, the B2B. And no matter if I did no other marketing, it's B2B. But I also do a lot of internal marketing with my patients. My patients are my biggest assets in terms of going back out there and telling them,
Always.
I don't say every patient. I would say the vast majority of patients will say, I've told 1,000 people about you. You're the best, whatever it is. And so I have that. And then in things like full arch implants and just brand notoriety, brand awareness, if you will, there's a lot of stuff out in the community, stuff I do in the individual communities, small stuff. And then, whether it's a sponsor a highway or a board or whatever it is. So brand awareness, general B2C, and then most of it is B2B, and then that internal marketing piece is also a big thing for us.
How many doctors in the total combined practices? How many surgeons total?
Just 5.
Just 5, and how many locations?
4.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
do you see though? Do you track? I know the spend, but are you tracking to see where the patients are coming from? And in the last 10 years, have you seen a shift, getting more consumers coming in unattached to dentists? Are you seeing more?
Absolutely, which actually works for me. So
then you can go back to the dentist that referred you, and that's better than the fruitcake you give them.
Absolutely. So that's
box of cashews.
Right. I mean, that stuff is.
You'll leave that one alone.
Yeah. So I mean, the fact is there are many, many more patients coming through because they're doing their homework. So part of my marketing spend is based on the fact that when a dentist a dentist sends his or her patient to an oral surgeon, right? So many of them will say, go see this guy. He's the best. You got to go see this guy. But some of them will go say, see an oral surgeon. These are the 2 or 3 that I work with. And see who takes your insurance or whatever it is. It depends on the type of practice. It depends on the specific relationship I have, the dentist, whatever. And so I want, when the patient gets 2 cards or 3 cards or whatever, I want them to be able to turn to the assistant, to the hygienist, to the front desk. I'll be like, I got these oral surgeons. Who do I go to? I want those girls to be, or those people, and I want those people to be my ambassadors. And then I want them to go search on the internet, and I want my practice to have the best reputation on the internet, whether my website looks good or I'm paying for AdWords or whatever it is. I want them to look at me and be like, oh shit, this is a better practice. This is clearly a better feel for me than this stuff. Exactly. So all of that comes into play when I think about what I'm doing marketing wise. One thing I wanted to go back on in terms of trends. So I do think, and I have thought about, and we actually have started to do it to some degree. There are a lot of, so I'll tell you right now, if I was a general dentist, I'm going to say this is bad for my business, but whatever. If I were a general dentist, I would have every specialist in my office, period. There's no question about it. There's no reason why. I mean, I don't understand why you would ever refer a patient out of your office. It doesn't make any sense from a business perspective. As long as you have well-trained specialists, continuity of care, consistent good treatment, there's no question. So take that away. So
I'm so shocked that you'd say that, by the way.
It goes back to your meritocracy comment. It goes back to the meritocracy. As long as you can do it really, really well, right? To the standard of care that someone like it should stay. Sorry, continue.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, look, when I started my practice, I was working in 9 different offices. I would go here and there, half day here, 1 day a week here, whatever it would be. And that's what I was doing. I was hustling during the early years, and I was good, like patients were getting very good care. The downside was the follow-up, right? So I wasn't there if there was ever an issue 2 days later. I mean, it would be
exposes you
difficult.
to more liability and
Exactly. So that's the downside for having specialists in a general office. But if you have a large enough practice where you can have the specialist there on a regular basis, that takes that part of it away, right?
Can I tell you the downside of that though, BTG? Because I have a multi-specialty practice. There was some law that I can't find where it was written, but it was probably written 15, 20 years ago, and I can't find the journal that the law is written in. But it states, it's like thou shalt, I know it starts with that, but it says thou shalt pay a specialist double what thine GP gets paid, and that just doesn't work for the economy. I don't understand. Like, so why is a specialist paid at a higher percentage, even though the fees are higher? Why do they get a higher percentage of what they do? It just makes no sense.
I think it actually does make sense.
Let's talk about that.
I think a specialist should get more.
Well, they're going to get more because they get a higher fee.
No, but forget the specialist. If a guy is going to bring something to the table that you're not going to be able to offer without him, then he should get a higher percentage of it. That's my perspective on it.
Well, the economics of the business don't change, though. I mean, if you have a prosthodontist that doesn't cost less or more than a GP, and
so in pros maybe, but surgery, there's really other than the cost of the implant or bone grafting, there's really no additional cost, right? So if you have me in your office and you book me for a day and I do, I don't know, let's make up a random round number, $10,000 in production in that day, that's $10,000 that cost you very little, maybe a couple $100 front desk time and whatever it is, and the assistant or whatever it is. And so all of that is added revenue for you that you would not have had because you don't have, this is not you, this is
I know.
speaking, right?
And I do have a multi-specialty practice and my specialists get paid at those levels. And I've been doing it for 21 years. So but
that's for me, the justification, right? So if the oral surgeon's not there or whoever's doing your surgery, if the oral surgeon's not there, that surgery is not being done. You're sending it out. You're getting $0. If you don't have a general dentist that day who's making 30%, 33%, 35%, whatever it is that I have no clue what those guys make, but those guys are like, if they're not there, then maybe you do it, or maybe the other guy does it, or whatever it is.
You're saying that because your cost of goods sold is lower to provide because of pretty much no lab bill and stuff, that should then transfer then to the guy who provides it, or no?
No. That's a small part of it. I think in a simple concept is, for me, the reason why a specialist should receive more of a percentage is because you're not getting that work done without that specialist, right?
Got it.
So that's it. They're providing something, like, we're bringing revenue that you would otherwise not have if you.
But the same thing with the GP, by the way, you don't have 4 sets of hands, so it's the same. I hear you.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. Like that's fair.
And I just think that pressure is affecting the ecosystem of the DSO and how things are working. I mean, I know of actually a very successful oral surgery group in my area that just sold to a DSO. It was very interesting. I just kind of found it anecdotally looking around at something, but I just believe that the profitability.
You know what their multiple was?
No, I called and he hasn't called me back yet.
So,
but it's interesting because it's an interesting move for this very large. It's a very, very large DSO, one of the big players, and it's a total oral surgery practice.
So I think it makes total sense, and I think it's actually it's kind of the next chapter for the DS from the DSO model. You gobble up all these general dentists, and then why not hire a large oral surgery group?
Yeah, hub and spoke model. Hub and spoke.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, to me, it makes sense for the DSO. To me, it makes sense for the oral surgeons who maybe later on in their career and they want to do it. But I'm like the middle guy. What I've done to kind of grow and continue to look for I have a couple of limiting factors, namely oral surgeons, but I acquire guys toward the end of their career,
Perfect.
and
I've done the same. It's
them
awesome.
on, and you bring them on, and they have a nice relationships. They have nice relationships, nice reputation, and then now you're in the community, and you bring in a younger guy. You expand the scope to some degree.
Smart.
You increase the technology and the marketing, and the businesses, they grow significantly, very, very
Of
quickly.
course. And it's a great service to do for the exiting, retiring doctor, because he may think he has like 3 more years because he's like worn out by operations of the business. And all of a sudden you come in, put a whole bunch of wind beneath the sails and his wings rather, and you extend this guy's career from 3 years to 15 years because he just gets to show up 1, 2, or 3 days a week and have no operational responsibility. So I would actually propose that the biggest benefactor to that is the exiting oral surgeon that's getting his ass kicked. It's awesome.
Yeah,
I did the same thing with my dad. I mean, not my dad said to me, like when I took over the practice in 2006, he's like, Craig, when I'm 68, I can't handle this shit anymore. Why don't you just pay me like this ridiculously large percentage of what I do? Because I don't want to have you buy the practice. But if I work for 3 years and you're paying me, 20, 30% more than I deserve, after 2 or 3 years, you'll have basically bought the practice. Fast forward 15 more freaking years, I'm still paying my dad, 78 years old, knock on wood, because I love him and he's happy.
Yeah.
But what I've done for my dad makes me so freaking proud, because he's 78 years old. He's able to come in. We work with amazingly talented team, and we've got awesome technology and cone beam and milling machines and 5 different scanners. And he's doing shit that he would have never done at a 78-year-old. These guys that are 70, 68, they still are good oral surgeons. They just don't want to double down on tech at this point. They can't recoup it.
That's right. Yeah, the guys that I've acquired have grown as their own people, and then the practices have grown, and they're like totally re-energized.
That's awesome. That's a good message for the doctors that are listening to us. We have a guy who's our buddy Dwight. So Dwight's talking about this guy. He's a really young, healthy dentist. He's like 68. He's a surfer. He's very physically fit. And he's just like, listen, I want to pull the plug. And I told Dwight, I'm like, dude, don't pull the plug completely. Like, see if this guy, if you can reinvigorate him. Because if you take away the operational responsibilities from him, he's got the bandwidth just to deliver patient care. You can extend this guy's career. So I told him, give him an earn up. Say, here's your buying price. Here's what we'll purchase you for. But if we actually do 30, 40% better over these next 3 years, here's an ability to share in that. And it lit the guy on fire, and that's a great thing. People, transact something, and then it's dead after that. Give people the ability to do better. I think it's so, if you can make it a win-win for everybody, it's cool.
Absolutely.
I have a couple. I know I'm monopolizing a lot of the time, Peter. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
Just a couple of quick questions. Patient calls. I don't know what makes me think that, but I love the way you speak to your patients. Do you have a protocol in your office that you could share with other doctors that are listening about the post-operative call? Do you do it? Do you do it personally? When do you do it? How frequently do you do it?
I call every single patient every single night.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, every single patient I call, every single. I mean, look, if I happen to have a dinner and it goes to like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I miss the call, then I call the next morning. But
I knew you were going to say that.
Do you want to know how many people don't do that, BTG? Just so you know, the lowest hanging fruit in absolute all marketing, the one that costs $0, is, and people are like, hey, should I do AdWords? I'm like, are you calling your patients? Well, no. Like, what?
Dude,
like,
don't
that's
spend $1 in advertising. Take your wife to Europe for like 2 weeks and just call every fucking patient. How hard is that?
It's so easy.
And it's easy for us too, because what happens is if it's not the night of, by the way, and it's the next day, at 9 o'clock at night, they're bleeding a little bit. They go on the internet. They call their friend who has a friend who's a retired dentist living in Boca Raton, who's 93, saying, you probably have an embolism. They go on WebMD. They find out what a fucking embolism is. They check into the ER, and you get a call at 1 a.m. at the ER.
That's right. It is actually, it's definitely beneficial to me to call my patient. So I mean, anytime I call my patient, if there's a little bit of bleeding, I mean, patients leave my office anticipating they're going to be numb forever and they're going to be bleeding forever. And like, they think that the worst case is going to occur. I mean, I shouldn't say when they leave my office, but their anticipation is that it's going to be a horrible thing. And then when I call them, they're always like, well, yeah, he's doing okay. He took a Vicodin, he's in a little bit of discomfort, or he took some Motrin, he's a little bit of discomfort, he's bleeding a little bit. And I just kind of put him at ease, of course, unless there's an issue, which thankfully there aren't many. But yeah, the phone call is like 1-on-1. stuff. Yeah.
And it's like, typically they're 2-minute calls, right? And people
they
think
want to tell you what they're eating. How about if I have a nice piece of fish? Is that okay?
Right. Okay. So
Like maybe like a
are
piece of flounder. Is flounder okay? Or do you prefer mahi, Doc?
there are some phone calls that are a little bit longer than I'd like, but it is what it is. It's the price. It's the price you pay. That's what
And my last question, then I'm going to let Peter unleash his flurry of questions on you. PPO. You mentioned PPO. Do you take PPOs?
I do. Yeah, I do. I personally take fewer PPOs. There's no DMOs, and we don't participate with Medicare or even medical insurance, but aside from one of my offices, but I participate with a couple of PPOs. My associates and my partner participate with more.
And you only have one partner?
I only have one partner. Yeah.
I got to shout out that guy in Zimbabwe, though, by the way, who tagged us, Peter and I, in Harare, Zimbabwe, bought our book. His name is Dr. Anasu Muzvasi. He's Anasu _ the dentist. Anasu the dentist. So big out.
Spell Anasu.
ANESU _ dentist from Harare, Zimbabwe. Looking like he's doing good stuff, by the way. He's got nice results on his IG. So thanks for tagging us.
Shout out. Tagging us.
Shout out. Boom.
So I'm glad you brought that up, Instagram, Greg, because actually I do not have a flurry of questions, number one. And number two, you've made it in the ecosystem of dentistry when you have imposters trying to be you. So did you know that there's people trying to be the bloody tooth guy who aren't the bloody tooth guy?
So I'll answer that question like in a couple of different ways. Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, one of my kids was on Snapchat, and I was like, what is this? Not like an old guy, but what is this Snapchat? But like, show me Snapchat. Let me understand it. So I tried to go on Snapchat as bloody tooth guy, and there was already a bloody tooth guy on Snapchat.
That's awesome.
And so I had to become like the bloody tooth guy or whatever it was. So I was starting to use Snapchat, and instead it was good. Actually using them both complementary grew both of them. It was really actually very interesting. I've stopped using Snapchat completely because Instagram.
So is everybody.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, so Snapchat, yes, there are guys on Instagram who try to do things similar to me, and then there are guys who do like similar names or whatever it is. It is what it is. I mean,
I just think look, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it should be flattering, right? Because that's the best form of flattery is someone trying to imitate you. I think you made it, and I think that's cool. I do see that like even there's tons of hashtags, and I don't know if they're trying to garner your attention, but I see lots of cases have been hashtag bloody tooth guy. Maybe not trying to be you, but maybe trying to garner your attention so that you will chime in, right? And I think and that's the point of social media, right? It's a community so that we can all communicate, get better, right? That's the whole point of it. It's a cocktail conversation, if you will. That's the best point, as being like the humble bragging everywhere you go. It should be a little bit more conversational.
I just realized I'm the king of humble brag, by the way. I am so, but that's such a nasty trait to have. But that's a side comment. I'm actually thinking out loud right now. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're just a top. No, I did that too. I did that. No, listen to my story. It's way better.
Oh, well, yeah. It's funny you said that because I have a better story for you.
I'm just kidding. You're not either one of those, buddy.
Dude, this has been awesome. I'm loving every minute of this. So Pete and I spoke at the DIA last year, but I don't know if we're going this year or not. I think
No, how would you not know if you're going or not?
Yeah, I look to you for those
Well, I'm going. You just weren't invited back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, that's terrible. What a way to break the news.
Are you
kidding? Okay. Because I was invited to speak at the one of the most major conferences, and they said under one condition. I said, what? They said, don't curse and don't bring fucking Peter Boulden.
Don't bring dead weight. Ball and chain. Do not bring your ball and chain, please.
Sorry, Bloody. You were saying something about DIA.
I was saying I was in the room when you guys were talking.
Oh, no way. Oh, my God. And you still agree to go on this podcast? That's incredible.
Yeah, it was great. I actually enjoyed DIA a lot. I spent like a week in LA. I had a great time.
It's the future of, and I know Blake pretty well. Blake McClellan, he's been on the podcast, and he's one of the starters of it with Pay Ray, and I guess anyway, I told him, I was like, look, the energy that you guys had at conferences was invigorating. I think it's good for dentistry. And I think that kind of conference is the future of dentistry. Whereas Craig and I have spoken at some places, and I can remember being on stage and there was 1,000, 1,100 people, and then go back 5 years later and speak, and there's 100 people in the audience, right? Because it's the antiquated old school way versus the new blood, the contemporary, the social media, the influencer. Like it's
and the guys were all hip too. Like I felt
hip,
like,
right?
yeah,
Hip and cool, making dentistry cool again. But
I agree.
Yeah, oh my God, let's make a red hat, making dentistry cool again.
I mean, the fact is that it's whether it's cool or not, or it's in our mind because we're in our own little ecosystem and we think that it's more big time than it is.
The confirmational bias.
Right. I mean, there are
sure.
plenty of dentists out there who have crossed over into more awareness. I mean, even just look at the fact that what's her name, Kendall Jenner, Kylie Jenner, whatever it is, started that moon or invested in that moon or whatever it is. Whether you agree with the product or not, the fact that oral care and health care are now becoming related with the aesthetics, and you got like an Appa and Kevin Sands and guys like that who are focused on, really good quality dentistry, but also brand building and their name and all that. I think it's I think it's great. I think it's great for dentistry. I think it's great for everybody.
Yeah, so, rising tide floats all ships. Appa's doing wonders for all of us. I mean, when I got out of school in 1998, I had to describe what a porcelain veneer was. I'm like, it's like a fingernail, like it's put on, and people just had, by and large, a really negative perception of dentistry and going.
Wait, how did we just go from Appa back to you?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't know, but I just think that
you talking. I was talking veneer.
No, dude,
let's go back to Appa. So he has transformed the industry.
He has, for sure. He has.
He spent his own money, literally creating YouTube shows, and went big time with his brand. And I think it created that awareness. And like you said, it raised a massive amount of awareness, just like Extreme Makeover did back in the day, and just like
the Swan, all that shit.
Like it or not. It caused dentistry to boom, the elective dentistry, right? And Craig says everything's elective other than an extraction dentistry. It caused the industry to boom, and I think it's great. And so I hate to see when people hate on guys like that because they're sticking their neck out and they think it's a self-serving. They think it's self-serving for them, and I say, look, you're going to get an ancillary benefit from that in your community. So don't hate on the guys that are really trying to move the needle forward. Maybe it is a selfish benefit, but you will get a reverberating benefit from that, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, that's another thing about life, right? That whole hater mentality never leads to success. I mean, just positivity. I mean, I know, like, no one else.
But don't you see that it's like, don't you see in dentistry though, and I'm not hating on the profession because obviously I love it and it's brought great things to me, but it's one thing where, you hear a dental firing squad would be a circle, or you hear this a zero-sum game. Well, if you did this procedure, that means I can't do it. Like, no, we can both do it. Just because you live in a house doesn't mean that I can't have a house too, kind of thing.
That's right.
And so you see the zero-sum game being, I think, a little pervasive in dentistry.
Yeah, there's a little Naval Ravikant for you right there, what you're talking about. We're huge fans of Naval Ravikant. Have you listened to him?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. You got to freaking
a link to the podcast. It's literally going to be, it's Illuminati.
Dude, he's genius. His name is Naval, Naval, last name Ravikant, Ravikant.
He's the CEO of Angel List, anyway, just hearing him kind of talk,
it'll change your brain.
Why are you 8 times smarter than me? Like, how did this happen?
Oh, and how to come back to you again? No, I'm just kidding. I was just trying to get my.
Touche.
I'm kidding.
So that's it. That's all I got, brother. I don't have a flurry of questions like you alluded to, which gave me sweaty back because I was like, wait, I better come up with some good questions.
I did that on purpose, bro. I did it on purpose.
BTG, if you haven't listened to our podcast before, you one of the tenets of the podcast is that we lean into each other pretty hard and we make fun of people. I mean, not people. We make fun of each other, actually.
Yes.
And we have this. What do they call it, Craig?
Banter. I don't know.
Kind of thing.
I don't even know what the hell it's called. But anyway, it's worse in person. I was at Peter's Lake House a couple of weeks ago up in Lake Notley in northern Georgia, and his bashing of me was nonstop. We were wakeboarding and like I pulled skin off my hand, and that just started this nonstop berating 72-hour teasing session of my
I said, well, I just needed everything was my hand. I was like,
dude, it hurt. Like I was wakeboarding. I like
for you. Put this little Vagisil on your hand, buddy.
And I'll
right?
tell you what, as an off-label use, Vagisil is great for minor skin irritation. I mean, it was
Meanwhile, I broke my toe, and he's like, dude, what? And Greg's like, well, back to my hand. Look at this skin. Look at this skin right here.
I love it. I mean, busting balls, that's really what you'd call it. That's great.
That's the language of love for men, right?
Exactly.
Like, if I'm not busting your ball and you're my buddy, like, we're probably not that close to friends.
That's exactly right.
Well, then you and our best friends, bro.
Exactly. That's the language of love for men, I swear to you. And women always get so perplexed by like, you're so hard on your friends. Like, no, right. I'd take a bullet for the guy. I love him. Well, you just busted on him. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Right?
Exactly. Oh, man. Well, listen, Bloody Tooth Guy, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We know you're busy. You're running around doing all sorts of stuff. It looks as though right now you look like you're pretty happy in a sunny place. So
there's no busyness right now. I'm relaxing.
Yeah, that's awesome. But thanks for pouring into the profession, helping our colleagues know what's possible and raising their clinical IQ and their expectations to another level. And I think what you're doing is a real service, and proud to have you here on the podcast. It's been great having you here.
It's definitely been great. I hope it was beneficial to you, to your guys, to people who listen, and I really appreciate it. And looking forward to talking again.
Hey, one last question. Sorry, one last question.
Will you push this out to your audience if we can put it on Insta? If we don't do it, your Insta, since you have more followers than Craig does.
Well, I've just rounded up to 204 right today. I got another follower.
I'm kidding. And maybe. Sorry, I'll let you answer that.
No, I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
I was thinking I was trying to leverage your fan base in terms of promoting our podcast. It was a shame.
Yeah, 100%. Let me know. Factually, just tell me when it's on. I want to promote it. I want it out there. So for sure.
And then we should just have another conversation about maybe staying anonymous. And maybe I know you have promised to reveal yourself, but
I don't.
Right? Yeah. I think go back to maybe just a face mask when you do your lecture at DIA, maybe just something that creates I want you to stay anonymous. And
I do too, man. Very much so. I feel very strongly about this, and I really want to say that. And listen, I'm looking at your face right now. You got a very nice looking face. I say that with an unblemished record of heterosexuality, but I do believe that I could see why other people like Alec Monopoly may want to cover their face. I just saw
he's handsome.
Yeah, but I just think that I would like to see BTG remain anonymous. That's my vote. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. And
no answer. Just think about it, right? Because in life, you think about where's your upside and where's your downside in everything you do. And I see more. I don't know. I don't see the. I don't know.
Yeah, you could do the whole DIA thing, almost like a Wizard of Oz style, with a backlit against a big sheet and it's your silhouette. And then your silhouette will be massive because you could stand far away from the sheet, so you have like a 10-foot silhouette, and give the entire presentation and then go through the back door. I mean, dude, this is incredible.
Yeah, you can't make this up.
I'm thinking Smoke Machine. Smoke Machines are cool, man.
All right.
Yeah, just marinate on that. Marinate.
Definitely.
All right. Well,
good to talk to you.
Best of luck, brother. You keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing in the profession and otherwise. And man, I learned a lot today. So thanks for taking the time.
No, you too. Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
All right, man. Over and out.